During normal waves in Salmon Run, salmonids spawn from all over the map, and in the chaos of the wave, it can seem like this process is happening at complete random, with no rhyme or reason. This begs the question, are the aspects of these spawns entirely random? The short answer is no, they aren't. Salmonids spawn using a consistent logic, and understanding this logic allows us to predict certain things about them, such as where it is possible for them to spawn, when they can spawn, and if certain bosses are off the table from spawning. And I don't only mean in theory, this information can be applied to real games to benefit the team. Let's go over the spawning logic together. The first thing we need to do to understand salmonid spawning is to understand where they can spawn. On every map in Tide, there are invisible preset positions in various spots that act as spawn locations for salmonids. For example, right here, all of these chum are walking in a straight line from the same position in the water. Why? That's because there's an invisible spawn node behind there. So even though the water around them is also open, they can only spawn from the location that is preset. So here are the nodes used by most salmonids for Sockeye Station normal tide, as seen from a bird's eye perspective. Each of these blue circles represents a spot that salmonids can spawn from. Outside of a couple exceptions, these spots are unchanging and predictable. I'll be referring to these non-exception nodes above as common nodes from now on. Another element of salmonid spawning is that salmonids like to group up, rather than spawn alone. To accomplish this, the common nodes are internally assigned to be in groups with one another. We can refer to these as spawn groups. Here are the spawn groups for Sockeye Station normal tide. So for example, let's say the salmonids randomly choose to spawn from group A at the start of the wave, on the right side. Despite there being 9 other unused nodes around the map, the salmonids exclusively use the ones assigned to spawn group A. After spawning in one spawn group for a while, the salmonids will select a different location to begin spawning from, and this continues until the wave ends. Now, emphasis on the word different there. They will choose a different one each time. In this example, they can move to group B or to group C, but they cannot stay at group A. Some spawn groups are close enough to one another that it can give the illusion of the same spawn group happening for an extended period of time, but that's nothing more than differing groups overlapping each other. Right here on Jam and Salmon Junction, low tide, the green and red nodes are actually part of 2 different spawn groups, so it is possible for salmonids to only spawn on the left side of the map for a long time. So let's quickly go over some exceptions to normal spawn rules. Fish sticks use their own unique spawn nodes rather than the common nodes. However, their nodes are still assigned to spawn groups, so the fish sticks will still spawn alongside the other salmonids in their group. Snatchers also have unique spawn nodes. Here are the spawn nodes for Snatchers on Sockeye Station normal tide. The game will choose one of these nodes at random for each wave, and Snatchers will exclusively spawn from that node for the entire wave. The node that it picks is also often referred to as Snatcher Direction. Big shots and flyfish are both sometimes able to spawn from areas not normally associated with their spawn group, depending on the context of the wave before they spawn. This will be discussed more in videos for the big shot and the flyfish later. Now that we know where the salmonids can spawn, let's discuss how they spawn. There are 2 types of salmonids to worry about, lesser salmonids and boss salmonids. Lesser salmonids include small fry, chum, cohocs, and snatchers, and they will spawn repeatedly throughout the wave so long as conditions are met. In the case of small fry and chum, they will spawn if there aren't too many salmonids already on the field. What determines this cap is the hazard level or difficulty of the shift, which is determined by the ranks of everyone in the shift. Small fry spawn in groups of 3. Cohocs have this criterion as well, but they also have a second one, being that they won't spawn if there are too many cohocs already on the field. If the cohoc cap is full, which also depends on hazard level, cohocs will no longer spawn until the cap is freed up. Snatchers will spawn so long as there are eggs on the field that aren't already being snatched by a different snatcher. Boss salmonids, on the other hand, work differently. At different set times in the wave, bosses will spawn. This means that the number of bosses that spawn is entirely predictable and is based on the shift's hazard level. In addition to spawning at set times, they also spawn in set groups, depending on the timer. This chart shows us the information we need regarding bosses spawning and the timer. Let's go through it together. At hazard level max, or HLM for short, we can see that each spawn group will last for 8 seconds. So the first spawn group, starting at 100 seconds on the timer, will last until 92 seconds are left, and then a new spawn group will begin. On the right, we can see the number of boss salmonids in each group. Since this is the first group, 3 bosses will spawn. This means that at the start of the wave at HLM, we can predict that the first 3 bosses will spawn sometime on or between 192 seconds, and that there will be 3 bosses in that group. After the spawn group starts at 28 seconds, no more bosses will spawn. This is true of every hazard. This last spawn group only consists of 1 boss, and this boss spawns as soon as the group starts. Moving on, when bosses are spawning, they will not exceed 3 of the same boss. For example, if there are already 3 scrappers on the field, no more scrappers will spawn until one is defeated. Also, if a fish stick successfully drills into the ground, the stick itself will still count towards the individual fish stick spawn cap. So if 3 sticks have burrowed successfully, no more fish sticks can spawn. If a boss tries to spawn but its individual boss cap is full, it will be replaced by another boss, which is often called boss replacement. Sometimes this also causes a butterfly effect on the wave, where further bosses start getting replaced even though their boss cap wasn't full, but it's not fully understood why this happens. There's an overall boss cap of 15. If this is met, bosses will no longer spawn. Big shots cannot spawn on high tide waves. Okay, so that was a lot of mumbo jumbo. Here are the key takeaways. 1. Salmonids spawn in predictable ways. They spawn on set nodes around the map, which we can memorize. 2. Bosses will group up, spawning around similar nodes if they spawn around the same time as each other. 3. Bosses will also move the location of their spawn groups over time, meaning that bosses won't come from the same part of the map non-stop for a long period of time, unless there are multiple overlapping spawn groups. No more than 3 of an individual boss, including sticks left behind from defeated fish sticks, can exist on the map at a time. If another of the same boss tries to spawn, it will be replaced by a different kind of boss. Okay, now you understand why bosses and other salmonids in Salmon Run are not actually entirely random when they spawn. Memorizing all the information on the images I have shown you is quite useful. However, if you're not super well acquainted yet with the idea of boss spawn groups, play some rounds and just kind of think about the general idea and keep it in your mind, and notice ways that you can use the information to your advantage. Then once you're ready, I would recommend learning all of the spawn group areas on every map, and then learning how long a spawn group lasts for the hazard levels you usually play at.